Hello everyone, my name's Gavin. I'm a developer on the DMPRoadmap team, and in this video I want to talk you through some of the changes that we're making to the application with this new release and how you can help bring your own application up to speed with these changes. So first of all, I'm delighted to announce that what we've added to the models is a set of active record validations. For example, if we have a look at the new template model compared with the previous release, you'll see here that we've added quite a few active record validations, and that those are there to help make sure that any new templates that are added to the database have all of the attributes and in the format that we expect them to be. So this is going to be a huge step forward for everybody in maintaining valid data, reducing bugs, and reducing the stress that goes along with managing problems that users might have as a result of invalid data. So one of the challenges that we have just now is that a lot of the data that you'll have on your own database will not be valid. And simply adding these validations to the system is going to throw up a lot of bugs and unexpected errors, because you're effectively adding new expectations to the data that was maybe added to the database when these expectations were not there. So what I'm going to talk you through in this video is how to bring your own data up to speed so that it conforms to the new validation requirements. And to do that, what we've added is a new framework for cleaning up your data. So if you head over to GitHub and have a look in the lib DataCleanup folder, you'll find this README, which goes into a bit more detail about this new DataCleanup module that we've added and the tools that we've added to help you clean your own data. So first of all, we need a way to find which records on our database are currently invalid. And the way we do that is by running this rake task. Rake DataCleanup find invalid records. Okay, so I'll talk you through what we're looking at here. What this rake task does is goes through every table on your database and asks every record on that table, are you valid? So for example, here we have the annotations table, and we're going through each annotation on my table, and just like with the test suite, if it's a dot, we pass. And if it's an F, then that signifies that a record has failed. So here we can see that we have about 30 templates that have failed and about 50 users that have failed. And not only that, at the bottom we see the reason why they have failed. So here we can see that the reason the templates are failing is that the title can't be blank. So they're failing the title presence validation. And for the users here that were invalid because their first name can't be blank, and the user model has a validation on first name. So how do we fix this? Well, what we do is for each validation that has failed with our data, for each model, we're going to create a rule. And a rule is basically one discrete and specific step to clean your data. So sort of like a database migration, but we're only going to use these rules, this one-off, and it's to move the data from one state to another. To create a new rule, we're going to use this new generator called DataCleanup rule. So that's Rails, G for generate, DataCleanup rule. And we pass in the name of the model that we're cleaning up, so in this case template, And then we're going to say what this rule is doing. Well, it's fixing the blank titles. So I run this, and I can see that the generator has created this new file in the lib DataCleanup directory. When I inspect the file, I see that there's a new class that's been created called the fix blank title rule. And when this class is called, it's going to execute whatever's inside this method. So within the call method, you're going to describe the steps that need to take place to move your data from being invalid to valid. So in this case, we want to find all of the templates where the title was blank. And what I'm going to do just now is I'm just going to give them all a default title. So when I run this, it's going to find all of the templates on my database where the title was blank, and it's going to replace that title with a string that says default title. And here we have a description. This is just to report back to us as users what this rule is actually doing, and you can customize that. So how do I apply this rule? Well, I run a rake task called rake data cleanup clean invalid records. And what this task will do is it will go through each of these rules that we've defined one by one and apply them to the database. You'll see here, this is the description that we've defined here. So it's just letting us know that this rule has actually been applied. Now, when I run rake find invalid records, it looks like we still have some invalid templates. And if I show you from the console, the reason for that looks like it's the first few templates. So let's just grab the first template and inspect that. The title here is nil. And in my rule, I've specified that I'm updating titles that are blank. So that's one thing to be aware of, is that sometimes we want to look for both nil and blank if we're correcting a presence validation error. So when I run my clean invalid records rake task once again, and then I'll try to find invalid records, we can see now that all of the templates have passed the validation check, and now we're just left with the invalid user records. So that's great, our rule works. And one more thing that you want to be aware of is that you'll see that I've used the double colon notation before the template class here. The reason for this is that within our data cleanup module, within the rules module, we defined our own module called template, and this was to namespace all of our rules based on the model that they applied to. However, if we were to just refer to template within this class, then Ruby would look for the nearest matching module, which would be this. So what we want to tell it is that we want the template that's in the default object namespace, and we do that by passing in the double colon with no prefix there to say that this is the template that we're looking for. So if you find that you're coming up with, no method error where on, just make sure that you do have this double colon before any references to the active record models. So one thing you might notice is that we haven't committed any of our own rules to the repository. And the reason for this is that when we were running these rake tasks on lots of different databases, we found that we were getting lots of different types of validation error. So rather than just say, here are the rules for invalid data, we thought it would be more helpful if we just allowed developers to add their own rules based on their own requirements. In saying that, we also found that if we had a very large data set, then it would take sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes a couple of hours to run through all of the records using the rake find invalid records task. So what we also added was a rake task called rake DataCleanup find known invalidations. And what this rake task will do is go through all of the records and check them against the invalidations that we know or that we encountered quite often. And we do this through SQL, so it's a lot faster and we can get through it very quickly. So this is a useful starting place if you want to just quickly scan your data, but we do encourage you to run the full find invalid records rake task, because it's quite possible that you have your own invalid data or types of invalid data that we didn't have and so are not accounted for here. So that's the data cleanup module. I strongly recommend you head over to GitHub and have a look through the README. Just make sure you familiarize yourself with all of the rake tasks that we've added and what these are actually doing. And as always, take a backup of your database before you make any changes like this to it. I would also recommend you do have a look through the different active record models we have in the application, and just make sure you familiarize yourself with the validations that we've added. And if you're not up to speed with Ruby on Rails validations, then the Rails guides are always a great place to find out more about how these work and how you should use them. So just a quick Google search for active record validations should bring up this Rails guide. Thank you.